Those of you who don't know, it's the Women's College of Columbia University, and if you have any further questions or inquiries about the college application process or what it's like going to a women's college, please feel free to speak with me after my presentation or the seminar session. So the following presentation will be the first of two presentations or researches that I did while I was a high school student at Bard High School Early College. Next week, I actually plan to discuss my research in breast cancer metastasis and drug resistance, a study I conducted at the Department of Biology at Yeshiva. We'll be able to revisit some of the research procedures that the CERA went over last week about PCR and gel electrophoresis. This is actually the most exciting research I did when I was in high school. But my very first introduction to research was at NYU, where I had the privilege of studying the daily routines of 1-month and 6-month-old infants from various ethnic backgrounds to ultimately understand how this played a larger influence in child development and school readiness. I'm not sure how
Just use the thing, the clicker.
The clicker?
Yep.
Thank you. As for the overview of my presentation, I'll be discussing the Metro Baby Project, which was a larger project within the Center for Research on Culture, Development, and Education at NYU. Then we can deconstruct some of the various research activities that I carried out at the center, followed by how my contribution or our contribution as students does make a difference at our research sites and laboratories. But now that most of you have situated yourselves at labs and your mentor has told you the heart of their research, as you all know, every research project, whether big or small, coincides with a scientific method. The very first step of the scientific method is to ask a question, right? Or to have a scope of what you're trying to find. So the Metro Baby Project wants to understand whether a child's surroundings stimulates an impact in their development and school readiness, okay? And even though this question is needless to say, the project wanted to collect data and narrow their question so they can understand how a child's surroundings stimulates an impact in their development and school readiness. The study began in 2004, and about 324 mothers and their newborns from the following ethnic backgrounds, African American, Mexican, and Dominican, who were all part of a federal program called Head Start, were recruited from Bellevue Hospital, Harlem Hospital, and Adams Pavilion. The project worked with these families over a span of 6 years. But my team were focusing on infants between the ages of 1 and 6 months. Which brings me to my following topic in our overview, which is our research activities. So the phone interview. So in the phone interview, an individual from our project collected data about personal information about the family. This is important because we will not be able to comprehend child development alone from daily routines. So our center got to know a little bit more about the parents, their socioeconomic background, their beliefs. Now, if we don't know if there's a direct correlation between personal background of the parent and child development, but it's something to consider when we're evaluating our hypotheses and drawing conclusions. So this is actually the heart of my research, the daily routine diary, which was what I focused on when I was, again, at the center. So we collected daily routines of 1 and 6 month old infants within a span of 24 hours through a phone interview with the mother or guardian of the household. Our interviewer would ask the mother, "I'd like to get a sense of what a typical day is like for your baby. Let's start with when your baby woke up. What time was this? And what was the very first thing you did yesterday?" And then we would record this information into a daily log. Now here's where, as you can see, it's between, it has 1 hour intervals, right, from 6 to 7, 7 to 8, and we're asking the mother, what is she doing with her child, or what the child is doing in a specific, in those specific times. So we're asking, what was the baby's activity? Who was the activity with? It could have been with the mother, the father, a sibling, an aunt. We need to also keep in mind about that. Where did it occur? Where was it in the household? Was it at school? Was it at a playground? That's also very important information. And we need to know if there were, even though if it wasn't with the person who, if it wasn't with the primary caregiver, it's also important to understand who was present. Maybe this child has 4 or 5 siblings that we do not know about. So it's also important about that. Okay, so coding. Then we collected, after collecting all that data, we needed to reorganize our data into something that's more cohesive. So the data was coded, right? And each back with the coding log, each of those activities were correlated to an episode. So these are the major categories of the episodes that we have to categorize those moments of times. So this is how we would recode it into the episode, followed by who was the person with. So A would be everyone in the household, or M and F would be mother and father, S would be son and grandmother and grandfather. So these are just little abbreviations for who the person may have been. And this is just a sample coding for what we did. Okay, data entry to SPSS. Our data was re-entered into the SPSS, which is essentially a software package used for statistical analyses. Researchers in fields of social sciences find this to be a very useful software. It's important to collect data, but even more, for you to draw analyses for what you have already collected. For future plans. We wanted to research which routines were shared across culture groups, or which routines were unique to different groups. How does culture come to be expressed in the daily routines of infants' lives? For example, we saw a tendency of Dominican and Mexican mothers reading to their child more often than watching TV. This is a shared daily routine because the ethnic groups, because it was between these 2 ethnic groups. But then, how would this explain school readiness among Dominican and Mexican toddlers today? So that's something that we want to do further research on after we have collected already the data. So here are some of my references, acknowledgements. I worked with Professor Catherine Tamis Lamanda at NYU, who was my very first mentor. It was a pleasure working with her. Ryan McNeil and Emily Ho were my co-mentors. They were already undergraduates already at the college, NYU staff and the CRCEE, who was actually sponsoring our Metro Baby project. Dr. Sat, Professor Ross was does anyone have any questions that they might want to ask? Okay. Oh, yes. Right. That's a really good question. So you're saying how would watching TV equate with school readiness for a child, right? So the thing is that, again,